Welcome back to the Geek Speak Show, everybody. 3 days ago, the Geek Speak Show turned 16 years old. We're gonna celebrate it in later in this episode. I'm not gonna get. I may go down memory lane all these 16 years. I'm not gonna bore you. Just you'll see. We'll do that later on. Before we do that, though, let me do go down memory lane. Not for the show, for something else. Those of you that are as old as I am, maybe a little bit older than me, also. Remember when the Star Wars action figures came out? How happy we were, how we asked, no, we begged our parents, can you give us the Darth Vader, the Luke Skywalker? A lot of us did everything we could to get those straight A's because if we did, that was our reward. Do you also remember, I think it was about a year before that, there was a line called Staroid Raiders. It was made by Tomlin Toys. It was, well, I guess today you guys would call them the Timu Star Wars action figures. Back then, nobody knew what the heck a Timu was. So it was just weird, but cool. Still, action figures. Yeah, yeah, kind of based on a galaxy far, far away. Not that one, another one, but they could have been in that galaxy also. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because there is a company, a toy company, that is putting out their own line. And you see him there. It's somebody who actually, those of you longtime listeners might remember, you didn't see him back then. We weren't doing video then. You heard him. It's Gavin Hignight. He is coming on to talk about a new line of action figures that are based on those knockoff toys from back then. Gavin, welcome back to the Geek Speak Show. How are you? Good to see you this
Hey,
time.
yeah, it's crazy. Well, first, congrats on 16 years.
Thank you.
Gosh, how long ago did we do this? It's been at least 13. It was towards the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
2013 or 12 when you first came on.
Wow,
So yeah, it
crazy.
was is in the very beginning. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
we're both still standing.
yes.
Thank goodness. And
Well,
yeah, we're knocking off the knockoffs in a
mm,
way. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. I mean, you see the figures behind you, but talk about the company and what made you guys want to do your own action
Yeah.
figure.
Thanks. For those who I don't know or don't know me, I work in TV animation mostly. I've worked in like comics and animation, cartoons, and but the whole time, I've worked on IP that is toy related. Shows like Transformers, or we did a Star Wars show. Um, my favorite, one of my favorite series I've ever worked on was Ninja Turtles, the 2012 series. But along the way, I kept working with a writer named Doc Wyatt, and Doc and I just constantly were talking toys and nostalgia and all the stuff that we love. And right around, the best time to launch a business clearly was the pandemic. Right around that time, we launched what is, now Wandering Planet Toys, and let me pull out my Prisoner here. We launched with Kenner style retro figures of the Prisoner. There's Patrick McEwen as number 6. And when we did it, it was, a real labor of love. And we were like, we love toys and we love The Prisoner. The Prisoner has never gotten any really cool collectibles that you could find. Do other fans want both? And it turned out it was a tremendous yes. It really launched our company. We've made an additional wave of Prisoner. We've made 1/12 scale deluxe. They're on the way from the factory as we speak. And then we just continued on. We made a set of Laurel and Hardy. I'll grab those that I'm super, super proud of. I'm a big Laurel and Hardy fan. So getting to do an officially licensed, set of the boys, as fans call them, was a real treat. So yeah, we've focused on IP that exists, that deserves toys and hadn't gotten a really good toy or recently. But all along, we as fans kept seeing Starry Raiders pop up, and they're amazing. They were totally if your grandmother didn't know the difference between a Wookiee and a Starry Raider, she'd bring one of these home for you, and you probably were a little disappointed. Or it's the one that was at the drugstore by your house and you could get, so you bought it because he had like a little glow in the dark lightsaber thing. Um, the thing about them though is they're really cool. They were goofy and odd and weird in all the best possible ways. They're super colorful. And Tomlin, who made them, just kind of, went the way of the past, like so many companies. And Doc and I were like, well, we want more. These things are so hard to find. We were like, let's create a line that like pays homage to those classics. But let's make them in a way where they're new and don't step on. Like we're not doing repros, we're not doing reproductions. It's like the next generation of that type of character, and it's been super fun making them. So yeah, we're basically diving into this really fun evergreen generic Goonie space world with these, eight first figures and then additional add-ons.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into those in a second. But I was thinking, you called them, and they were weird, and they did look, compared to the Kenner toys that came later. But really, today, if you think about it, yeah, they may be weird, but correct me if I'm wrong. Are they not valuable now? Because
Oh,
I imagine
totally.
they're pretty hard to find now.
Yeah, they are almost impossible to find in really good shape, and especially with accessories. Um, which, that's the thing is they were made, it was a smaller distribution, as a small company out of Hong Kong that made them. And those are sometimes the things that become the most collectible, right? Like knockoffs, little indie or, not Hasbro, not Kenner at the time, or not Toy Biz. That stuff that came from the odd little companies becomes sometimes the most collectible. Like one of my favorite lines is Nightmare Warriors, which looked like He-Man figures, but they were skeletons of like Geronimo or Sir Lancelot. And those things, I mean, you couldn't give them away when we were all kids, and now they're hugely sought after and very valuable. Um, Not unlike Starroid Raiders. So for us, it just was like, well, there's a lot of us that love this aesthetic and love these fun, very colorful characters who are not going to be able to find the ones we want on eBay or in the shape we want. And it just started, we were like, well, let's scratch that itch and introduce this style of toy to a whole new generation. And that's kind of the mission with Planetoid Raiders is, you know, giving additional collectibles to those who may have some vintage pieces, but then also making accessible cool figures like this for people who otherwise couldn't get them.
Yeah, that actually leads to a question. I was gonna ask it later on, but sounds like a good segue there.
Yeah.
Today, 2026, as we all know, I mean, some of us listening and watching to us or not, we have some of ourselves, our own kids. Most kids today, they hardly read. At least I don't see them playing with toys, and not toys like what's behind you. Everything
Yeah.
is digital now. So who do you think is going to be buying? Is it just strictly collectors, or could it be for kids, actual kids to play with?
Yeah, I think these are more collectible. And I think that like the kids that what is interesting to me about these figures and the way we're really seeing Planetoid Raiders is they walk a weird line between super nostalgic and new art toy. They really feel in some ways more like art toys, like a vinyl figure or a Safubi or like a blind box toy you'd get from a Japanese company. So our approach in the packaging and in how we're approaching the line is like, one of the elements of the cake we're baking is nostalgia. And like our first eight figures are very faithful in color and style to the originals from the late 70s, early 80s, but we're also kind of pushing more into art toy territory. I'm a big fan of like Medicom and like Kubrick's while they existed and Bear Bricks, and I kind of see this as Wandering Planet Toys, our company. Like maybe this will be our Bear Brick. Maybe this will be the fun, goofy thing that we make new waves of. For years to come. I hope because there's so many possibilities with aliens and space and robots and just the aesthetic of these things. They're super fun, and we're trying not to add too much narrative. It's funny because Doc and I are both writers. Our job for a living is adding narrative to big IP, But I think for me, part of the charm of the Starroid Raiders is they didn't have, it's not like they had but they had names and that was it. So everything about them conjured your imagination. It was like if you were mixing them with your Star Wars figure, you were deciding who that little like, um frog-like alien was going to be. It's like the cantina scene is filled with all these creatures and you're in your head making the canon, right? You're making your own stories for them. And that's how this toy line was. So in our approach on Planetoids, we've been kind of fun with a sense of humor about the approach, but we're not defining them too much because we hope people who pick them up and buy them will start to daydream and it'll conjure some imagination and some fun for them.
Yeah, I was gonna say use the imagination
Yeah.
and I was actually about to ask you that, but you answered it before I did. There is no real story behind it. They don't come from a movie or an IP or anything. So
Yeah.
talk about the characters and names. I think you have a couple there that you can show too, right?
Yeah, totally. And I have to remember their names. Well, um, I'll hold this one up. This is a prototype of Sloog. Doc named and came up with bios. My partner Doc Wyatt on Wandering Plant Toys came up with a lot of the narrative that does exist. Sloog is kind of snail-like. He's fun. Very different. This is a real new original head compared to the original steroids. We, you know, kids of the 80s, we love Snake Eyes. We love the story, why that toy existed, why he didn't have, paint apps on him. And we thought, well, we've got to do a figure in our line. We have this colorful line like red and purple and blue. I was like, but we got to do an all black one that feels kind of like our Snake Eyes or our stealthy guy. So we created him. Our designer, Martin, is I believe he's in Scotland, and he's our sculptor. He sculpted all the heads. But what was fun is he reached at his kid. He went to his kid and he said, "Hey, do you wanna help me design a head?" And his kid came up with one of our favorites. We're calling that character Snatoon. Um, how cool would it, I think his kid's like around 9 or 10. How cool would it be to draw something out and hand it to your dad, and then your dad sculpts it in ZBrush and then delivers it to a toy company that's actually going to make it. So Snatoon is joint effort between our designer and his kid, which is amazing. And what better mind to, focus, like it has all the imagination and goofiness of you know, a kid's
Kid.
imagination.
Yeah.
Now these prototypes are 3D resin prints, and our prototype painter, who's amazing, he was not available because he's so busy on his own line right now. So for all practical purposes, I painted our prototypes. So if they look really bad, it's my fault. We have painted prototypes for like our other lines that are factory accurate. These guys are a little more because we made a really fun commercial that everyone's going to see for these that will come up right before we drop our Kickstarter, and we needed prototypes for the commercial, so that's why we made these. But so that is Buzz, Buzzz. He's a little more like one of the original Staroids, but face is different, colors different. I'll say one thing about design, we really didn't want to take away from the vintage market. There are people out there who have collected the whole line of the toys these are inspired by, and we didn't want to water down that market with like repros because that always is not cool.
Yeah.
So anything that's really heavily inspired by a classic figure, there's still design changes in it. We moved the teeth or we changed how the eyes were shaped. We did things so they could sit on the shelf with like vintage toys, but not eat at the value of the vintage toys in the market. Weapons are, a couple of the weapons are pretty faithful to the classics. And then we introduced all new weapons. And then one thing we like to do on our toys, especially with the retro, like Prisoner is a really good example. If you saw this, you'd think, oh yeah, this was probably made in like the eight, or this could have been made, but we sneak stuff in. So like he has wrist articulation, which, toys of that time did not have that. But we were able to put it in and not change the aesthetic of like a vintage figure. We're doing the same with planetoids. So if like you're hunting, 4 or 5 years from now in a vintage shop and there's a planetoid and it's labeled as anything other than that, all you'll have to do is twist the wrist. And if there's a wrist joint, it was made now versus, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Fun stuff like that.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, do they come with accessories? But yeah, you mentioned they have weapons and
They do. Yeah. So we did some blasters. We did a laser sword. We also did some kind of Easter eggy stuff, which I can't wait for people to see. We weren't just taking inspiration from Starroid Raiders. We took inspiration from other obscure space, kind of Star Wars era, the craze of space toys, stuff you'd see in like a Sears Wish book. We took other elements from other toy lines and worked them in. And I don't want to say too much because we'd rather it be more like an Easter egg. But some of the weapons, you'll recognize maybe from other toy lines. I'll leave it at that.
okay.
Other extinct toy lines.
Yeah, people will be on the lookout for that. But actually, that leads to the next thing. It probably they're probably asking when's it going to be out? It's actually going to be a Kickstarter campaign. Hasn't launched yet, right?
Yeah, yeah, and thank you. So we very specifically drill down on that. Uh, the campaign page, the landing page is on Kickstarter now. Wandering Planet Toys, Planetoid Raiders. So you can go and follow the campaign now. So when we launch, and it's going to be early September, then you'll be among the first, to know and to be able to pledge. We've found with niche toys like this, Prisoner, we had to do Kickstarter, because we were just new. And as everyone knows, the tooling and manufacturing for an action figure is very expensive. Um, so we did Kickstarter and it worked really well as basically a pre-order system for figures and as kind of a marketing component. So we went on, our next toy line was Nancy Drew. We did the Nancy Drew. I should actually let me grab a Nancy Drew here. We did and this was another IP that just has been around for 100 years and for some reason never had a really good dollar toy. There's one of our Nancy Drew figures, very retro. But yeah, we did this with Kickstarter, and then we went on. We did Laurel and Hardy, and we just did Kolchak the Night Stalker. Really fun stuff that you know you basically have to get pre-orders from the fans who like it in order to manufacture it because it is so niche. And so yeah, we're doing the same with Planetoid Raiders, and it sounds like a cliche, but we always tell this to our backers and our customers, we really can't do it without you. We're a small company and coming up with the funds for the factory for tooling, it's like the community of that toy has to come together to help us do it.
Yeah.
Laurel and Hardy fans did that. Prisoner fans have done it multiple times. And we think there's enough, rabid toy collectors and nostalgia fans and also new people who love art toys who are really going to get these. And if that sounds like you and you want one of these little weirdos on your shelf, please, follow us on the Kickstarter. And I probably look like a crazy person. I'm actually searching my desk. I own a couple of Starroid Raiders, and I brought one out. I brought this guy out. So this is an original Starroid Raider from probably 1980, 1979. You can see how faded his chest sticker is.
Yeah.
And then I'll put one of our guys next to him so you can kind of see very similar, very similar. Oops, there we go.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, they actually fit right into the collection if you have some of the originals.
Yeah, totally. And if you don't, it's a good way to, enjoy that vibe in these type characters. Um, we we couldn't stop ourselves once we started designing them. Because I mean, they're really fun. They're really fun to make. I can't wait till we get them from the factory and I can put them on my shelf. But we kept going. We wanted the original, like a wave of eight. But then we had this idea for add-ons. And so the better the campaign does, the more figures get unlocked. And those are the ones that we're calling Arcade Raiders, which is kind of like a subline. And that's where we start to experiment a little more and get a little crazier with design and also some, like I said, some Easter egg type stuff that is inspired from other sci-fi nostalgia.
Yeah, looking at the packaging from on the Nancy Drews and the other ones, are these gonna have packaging or is it just gonna be the figure by itself?
Yeah, no, another great question. So we're doing three types of packaging. We're doing card backs like Prisoner and Nancy Drew or like an old classic Star Wars figure. The original Staroids were card back, and we wanted to evoke that vibe. So the two ways to get Planetoid Raiders are on a card back, and it's beautiful sci-fi backdrop, hand painted by artist Bill Rude. It looks very vintage and nostalgic. But we also wanted to we're really into like back in the 80s, you could get all these like action figure collector cases that
Yeah.
were kind of generic. And we wanted to do something like that. So we've been making a lot of fun tin lunch boxes for our other lines. And so we worked it out with the factory. Can we do a set of the 8 figures packed in a retro tin lunchbox, a Planetoid Raiders lunchbox, with like, the trays inside and stuff to hold the figures? And we worked it out. So you could either get them carded by themselves, you could do a carded set, or you can get the tin lunchbox that has all 8 figures in it. And I'll take a deep breath. The add-on figures, the Arcade Raiders, those are where we really wanted to start getting into like a blind box type vibe. And so we're packaging those in blind boxes. But the blind boxes are little arcade games. It's like a little arcade cabinet that snaps in two and the figure's hidden inside. And to do blind box on Kickstarter, people want to know what they're pledging for. So in this case, you're going to know what figure you're getting inside. But what's fun is you don't know what arcade game facade is on the outside. So in a way, it's almost like a reverse blind box.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going to pledge for the character, I think we call him Martok. There's like one of 3 designs he can come packaged in. And what's really fun to me is that the more of those figures you collect, the more you can populate a 1/18th scale arcade for them all to hang out in. So once again, just us, remembering a somewhat simpler time when, you're going to the arcade with a, pocket full of quarters and, hoping to play a game like Xenophobe or something.
Yeah. No, I'm already. I need to get. When did you say September is going to start the
Yeah, I
Kickstarter?
think we're going to do it right around September 15th. Uh, that seems like a target date for us. Don't hold me to that exact date. But like I said, the best thing to do if you're interested is go to our landing page for Planetoids Now, click follow this campaign, and then you'll just get an email when we launch. And the way we run campaigns, we're very personable. We do a lot of updates. People see the process of the toys being made. And like I said, on this, we're in a weird time period where people are trying to figure out how they feel about AI, and there's a lot of anger about how art's being generated. So we very, very specifically, we reached out to Bill, who's an awesome painter, and we were like, "Can you paint the card back for us? Can you paint the lunchbox art for us?" And so everything is very truly hand done. Bill also, he's a designer. He did all the chest graphic stickers for us, which are some of my, he just nailed. He looked at the classic designs and he understood how to make something new that felt old. So I love all the chest stickers on the Planetoid Raiders as well.
Yeah. What was that saying? Everything old is new again.
Yeah, totally. We're very much hoping that for that with these, totally.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you haven't even started the Kickstarter, but I'm already thinking ahead. Is it only going to be available for backers, or do you plan to make it available in stores or something?
Yeah, that's always like a hard question to answer because we of course want to make enough to try to go to retail. That's always a goal. But we cannot make these toys unless we do Kickstarter, unless people step up. So, we always tell people, well, yeah, we would love to get them into retail, but we can't do it without the phase where people believe in us and pledge. And so what that means is we need to make figures you can only get on Kickstarter, and we need to make it, you know, the lunchbox set that will never go to retail. The carded figures probably won't. Would we do blind box style maybe in the future? That would be awesome if we can get there. Um, but colorways, like color palettes, we already know the figures that you get on Kickstarter are going to be different color deco than anything that would come out later. So we always strive to make the toys that come out through our Kickstarter campaign very special and unique. So as a collector, you can be like, yeah, I nabbed that, you know, um, version of Warlore, the white Warlore, that's never going to be available ever again anywhere else. And, fast forward 3 years, if we've made a couple more waves and these have become collectible, the Kickstarter editions will, of course, be the most sought after because they'll be the lowest distribution. And
Yeah.
they're like made per order.
Hmm.
Long-winded
Exclusivity, in other
answer,
words.
sorry.
No, like I said, exclusivity. That I get it.
Yeah.
That's fine. So yeah, absolutely. I have everything for you guys. If you're listening, it's on the description. If you're watching us, it's down below in the same description. So, Gavin, thanks a lot. I know this is gonna keep you busy, but is there anything else we should? I know we're coming to the end of the year, but anything else we should be looking out from
Oh,
you?
absolutely. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so Planetoids is our big thing right now. We have a really fun Safubi style toy coming in the fall. We're working ferociously on our first horror figure, our first retro horror line. We're hoping that can land by October, to be continued on that. And then the toys we've already been working on are, our Prisoner 112 and our Kolchak 112 are just almost there with the factory. So we're hoping those will ship by the end of the year. And just 2 days ago, we signed the license to make an action figure of one of my personal heroes, who we can't say anything yet, but it's a figure that's never been made, and people have wanted it, and we're going to get to do it. So more soon on
That's how you do a tease. So,
that.
Gavin Hignight, I have Doc was gonna join us, but like Gavin said, he's a little busy.
Doc's busy writing cartoons right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have everything, the website, link to the Kickstarter. You get on just so you can be one of the first to back him when it does go live. And Gavin, thanks a lot for coming back. And
Hey,
let's
thank you
not,
for having me, man.
yeah, I was gonna say let's not make it another decade
I
plus
know.
when
Let's
you
not
come
do this
back.
every
Yeah.
decade. Yeah. Hopefully we'll have some really cool stuff to keep talking about too. So yeah,
Yeah.
would always love to come back.
So I'll say hopefully talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.